I've been working away for the last month or so, getting all of my vegetable seeds sown into the vegetable garden, all of my plants planted, but I've been keeping it all a little bit of a secret from you guys. I haven't shown you the whole thing, and that's because I wanted to do one great big reveal. Well, we've got a perfect day for it today. So today is the first ever vegetable garden tour. Let's go and have a look. Hey everyone, how's it going? And welcome back, and welcome finally to my raised bed potager vegetable garden. If you've been following along since pretty much the start of this year, you'll know that I've been on a journey working towards, at the very least, some kind of element of homesteading and self-sufficiency. And the linchpin of all of that is right here, the vegetable garden. Over the last few months, I've built the raised beds, I've filled them with topsoil, I've been sowing seeds indoors through the spring, and most recently direct sown outdoors. And now it's finally in what I think is a nice state, ready to show you around. And I thought you'd love to see what it finally looks like. We have got the perfect day here in Ireland. I've even got my shorts on. It's lovely and sunny and warm. That doesn't happen that often here. So what I thought would be really nice is just to show you what I've got planted and where, and most importantly, how it's getting on, because most things are doing really well, but there are a few things that are really not doing well at the moment, so I'm going to show you those as well. As ever, if you're not already a subscriber to the channel, make sure to hit the subscribe button. I post regular content all about my garden and everything I'm doing in it. And if you enjoy this video, please do hit the thumbs up button. It makes such a difference by telling YouTube that people like yourself are enjoying the videos that I make. Now, let's kick off by having a big, broad overview about what I've got planted in each bed and why. Okay, so before we start talking about things in detail, let's have a really quick run through the whole veg garden, and I'll show you the rough layout of what I've got planted and where. So if you're already subscribed, I bet you're going to recognize these two beds. These are my three sisters' beds, and they've got baby sweet corn plants, butternut squash plants, and also my French beans. So they're starting to come on really nicely now. And then in the two next beds, there are asparagus. Now, having two beds of asparagus is a little bit of an extravagance, to say the least. They use a lot of room, but I adore asparagus. So I'm growing two different types. On this side, these are asparagus plants that I bought as crowns from the garden centre, and on this side are my asparagus plants that I sowed from seed. Then alongside them, down the middle of this bed, I've got some lovely autumn fruiting raspberries, and on this side, thornless blackberries. So now that these four beds are talked about, let's have a look at the centre section. So now we're in the centre section of the garden, and this is my favourite spot, and it's because I've designed it to be a place that's not only going to be productive, but it's going to be beautiful as well, and a nice place just to come and sit and chill out for a while. To do that, I've made it an enclosed space by going with four 6-foot-long L-shaped beds. They're lined up so that we do have this nice sort of more open central section, and it also lines up with the gap in the hedge so that when you're out in the garden you get that kind of little tantalising look of what is in here to draw you in so that you spend a little bit of time here. Now, just to give you an idea of what's in these beds, the bed right over here is dedicated pretty much to baby leaves, salad leaves and things like that, plus there's also some peas. The bed behind me here, well, it's mainly more root vegetables. So I've got parsnips, I've got beetroot, I'm also growing some salsify. And then the bed just here is more like leafy greens. So there's bok choy, spring onions, there's spinach, there's rainbow chard, and as well as that, I've also popped some carrots in there as well. The bed behind me, well, at the moment it's actually lying dormant, and that's because I want to use it for more successional sowings of things that you tend to burn through quite quickly, like salad leaves and things like that. And then to tie it all together, each bed has got a bamboo cane wigwam of sweet pea. Now, you can probably see the sweet pea are still really small, and that's because everything in this garden this year is running really late for two big reasons. For starters, I only got the garden finished really about a month ago. It's just taken so much work, but despite that, I still want to move ahead and get stuff planted, even if it ends up cropping late or flowering late. Second reason is we've actually had a very cold, quite disappointing spring that stunted the growth of a lot of things. So as well as the sweet pea, I've got beans planted. Around the edges, I've got little French marigolds, just to add another little bit of colour and also to act as a companion plant. And then in each corner, as another pop of colour, I've got some little planters. They've got sunflowers in them, some nasturtiums, some calendula, and also some dahlias. So I'm really pleased with how this little central section is looking, but we're not done yet because there's 4 more beds to look at. And here are the final 4 beds. 2 beds are dedicated to brassicas and other little quick crops, and down at the end are 2 beds that at the moment are dedicated to potatoes. Now, what I've got in the brassica beds at the moment are a mixture of broccoli, or you may know it as calabrese, Brussels sprouts, and cauliflower, and then interplanted amongst those are things like radishes, turnips, and other little nice quick cash crops that I can grow in the spaces and then harvest, maybe even sow some more stuff and make use of that soil while everything else is developing. At either end of the bed, because there's a little bit of a gap, I've got something that isn't a brassica. I've got my courgettes. Now, they're not doing that great this year, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed that they're going to go okay. And then down here are my potato beds, and I'm going with a nice early variety, which is Charlotte, and on this side is the main crop, and that's Pink Fir Apple. So that gives you a really quick rundown of the whole garden. So now let's have a look at each of the beds in detail. I'm going to show you exactly what I'm growing and how they're getting on. So these are the potato beds, and actually there's not an awful lot to talk about because they are just happily doing their thing at the moment. I've already earthed them up, so each plant is surrounded by a nice deep mound of extra topsoil. Hopefully that's going to help me get a really good crop of potatoes and minimise the number of ones that end up going green and that can't be eaten. What is great and what is really heartening is that at the moment all of the potatoes, both the early ones here and the main crop on the other side, are looking really, really healthy. There's pretty much 0 pest or disease damage, which I'm delighted about. I've never grown potatoes before, so I wasn't entirely sure what to expect. So I'm hoping that they're going to come through and give me a really good harvest this year. One thing I have learnt already, and I've learnt it before I've even had a harvest, and that's I'm not sure I'm going to be growing potatoes in raised beds again. It works fine, but these are taking up an awful lot of what is really quite precious growing room. So I think instead next year I'm going to grow them either in separate containers or potato bags or something like that, because this is prime vegetable garden real estate that when I started putting the potatoes in, I thought this was a great idea. And now I've realised I'm not sure it is such a great idea. So let's keep moving on and we'll have a look at the brassica beds. So like I'd said, the next 2 beds along are the brassica beds, or at least they're mainly brassicas. So what I have are cauliflowers, calabrese or broccoli, and Brussels sprouts. Now, I had said that I'd interplanted them with little quick cash crops, and this is a prime example of what I've got. So what I have here are 2 little rows of turnip, and it's turnip Tokyo Cross. They're coming on really nicely. I planted these, well, I sowed these about 3 or 4 weeks ago. They've been thinned out since, and now the plants are starting to develop really nicely. Then I have 3 rows of radishes, and each one of these radishes is a different variety. There's Mahantong, Cherry Belle, and French Breakfast. And what I've been amazed at is actually how quickly these grow. Literally within a matter of weeks, these have really started to plump up. Now, I've been thinning them out so that they keep growing. I'm going to keep doing that, but just to give you an example, look at how well that's already coming on. I'm so happy because I love radishes and I'm delighted that these are doing well. And then at the far end, I've got my courgettes. Now, if you've watched previous videos, you'll know that I've talked about not having a lot of success with courgettes this year, and you can see the plants are really fairly stunted, but I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that they keep developing. Certainly this one looks like it's developing, but I think it's probably going to be a small courgette harvest year, and at the very least it's going to be a late courgette harvest year. And it's a pretty similar story on this side in this brassica bed as well. I've got the same brassicas and courgettes planted, but the only difference is interplanted amongst them is something a little bit different. I've got broccoli rab. I've never tried it, so it's definitely an experiment, and I've also got 2 rows of kohlrabi. Now, I have to be honest, looking down the rows of kohlrabi, there's not an awful lot happening yet. Now, they only got sowed maybe about 2 weeks ago, so maybe they are just that little bit slower to germinate and really develop into decent looking seedlings. I can certainly see a couple, but I can't see very many. I should have a nice row here and a nice row here, and there's not a lot happening. So we'll see, and maybe in a later plot video, you'll see that they've come on, or maybe they're just going to be a failure. Now, that's another bed talked about. Let's talk about the center section. This is the first of the 4 L-shaped beds in the very center of the garden, and I am really delighted with how this bed is coming on. I have sowed it with so many different things, and everything has come up, which I am delighted about, and I'm also very relieved about. So if we work our way along, from the edge you'll see that I have a row of Mange 2 peas, which have not been properly tied in yet. That's a job for another day. And I've edged each of these L-shaped beds with 2 things. There's tagetes, or French marigold, and chives. The reason for that, A, is to bring a nice little splash of colour, but to act as a companion planting option, and that is because I've got carrots sown and growing in this bed, and what I really want to try and avoid is carrot root fly. So I'm going with companion planting, and at the moment also opting for what should be a resistant variety. It's called Resistifly, and I've got 3 little rows just starting. I'm really happy about that. And then I have a row of beetroot. Now, these beetroot are Chioggia, the lovely ones that are like a pink and white candy stripe when you cut through the center. In amongst those, again, to try and keep away the carrot root fly, are my shallots. Now, they are looking really pretty sad. I'm a little bit embarrassed by these, and I think that's my fault. And I think it's because I took too long to get them into the ground. I had actually put these into little pots right at the very start of the spring when I got them and grew them on, but I left them in their pots too long. And now that they're out in the soil, they're looking really pretty scraggy. Now, they do seem to be developing a bit, but just not great. But I'll leave them in the soil and I'll see how they get on. I've then got a nice little sort of L-shaped row of rainbow chard. This is going to cover me for 2 things. I'm going to pick a load of it as baby leaves for salads, and then the rest is going to mature. And then over at the end, I've got 3 rows of spinach, 2 rows of tricolour bok choy, and 3 rows of spring onions. So this bed is really packed full of great stuff. So this bed is dedicated almost exclusively to salad leaves, and leaves that are really nice in salads. It's got the same edge planting and it's got some peas along the back, but what I have are some rows of Tuscan leaf salad mix, which you always hear me talk about in my seed sowing videos. I've got 3 rows of what I'm hoping is going to be lamb's lettuce, but to be blunt, there's nothing there at the moment, and I sowed them a few weeks ago. So I'm a little bit worried, and I'm not very hopeful. I think I'm going to need to do another sowing of those because they don't seem to have worked. And then behind me are even more leaves for salads. I've got some salad bowl lettuce, I've got wild rocket, and I've got kale. And what I'm really hoping is that this bed is going to work as a really nice kind of cut and come again bed, where whenever we want a salad, we can just wander down, pick a few leaves of whatever we want to have a nice mix and match salad, and then just go back up to the house. The other thing you might notice in each corner of the center section, I have these. These are lovely tubs that I've planted up with a mixture of nasturtiums, calendula, and a sunflower in the center, just to add a little bit more height and make this area feel that little bit more full. And the last bed to talk about in the center of the vegetable garden is this one, and that's because the 4th bed really is sitting dormant at the moment. but not this one. This is an absolute powerhouse. I have a row of lovely little beetroot seedlings. These are bolt hardy, more like your standard beetroot. I've got some more shallots, looking equally scraggy as the other side. Then I've got 3 nice rows of parsnips. Now, they are very small and they were planted very, very late, or they were sown very, very late. But I think it brings me on to an interesting point, because I get asked the question a lot, what if I haven't sowed my seeds yet, but I have the seeds? Well, I tend to think it's always worth giving it a go. Worst case, they're not going to work. Best case, you may get a perfectly good harvest. It may just be a little later, it may be a little smaller, but it's still a good harvest. And that's what I'm going with here, is I'm just going to give it a go and see how they get on. So then past this, well, little area that I haven't weeded yet, I've got 3 rows of salsify and I've got 3 rows of kailan. It's like a Cantonese Chinese broccoli, actually. I think that's going to be really interesting for stir fries. And then finally at the back, I have a row of borlotti beans. Now, they're quite far behind, even though I planted them in good time. But what happened was, when I planted them, they got quite shocked by being put out into the soil, because we unexpectedly had really a couple of quite cold nights. So what I've ended up doing is cutting them right back down, really down to their first set of leaves again, to make them bush up and hopefully have successful plants. They're looking all right, but I think it has knocked them back. So that's the L-shaped beds talked about. Let's keep moving down and we'll have a look at the last beds in the veg garden. And here are the final 4 beds. So let's have a quick chat about what I've got in these and how they're getting on. So in these 2 beds, these are my dedicated asparagus beds. And I'm so chuffed about these, because I do really love asparagus. And the idea of having them in my garden that I can just come out and harvest fresh is brilliant. So in this bed, I have a very standard asparagus that I bought from a garden centre and I bought as crowns. Whereas on this side, I have asparagus plants that I grew myself from seed this year, and the variety is called Ariane. It's an F1 type, and you can certainly see the size difference between these, which are essentially year 1, and these, which are essentially year 2. Either way, for both sets of plants, I'm not going to be getting a harvest for a couple of years. It's all about leaving them to grow, taking good care of them and letting them establish. But you know what? It's a small price to pay for what is going to be a real luxury harvest when they're finally ready to be harvested in the late spring in a couple of years' time. What you'll see as well is, in this bed, I have a row of autumn fruiting raspberries. And in this bed, I have a row of thornless blackberries. Now, I had looked online and I had seen that some people grow their asparagus in amongst cane fruit. And it seemed like a really good idea. And then I thought about it. I thought about it a bit more, and I talked to a few of my friends in the know. And then really, I've had a total 180, a total change of heart. The fruit canes are coming out and they're going to go at the other end of the veg garden. I don't think it's a good idea. I think too quickly, particularly in the case of the raspberries, they're going to spread. I think they risk crowding out, or at very least slowing down the growth and the progress of the asparagus. And I really don't want that. I want to protect these plants and have them as something really special. So next time you see the veg garden, fully expect that these are not going to be here, because in the next few days I'm going to be digging them up before it's too late and getting them moved. And then behind me, well, we have my 3 sisters' raised beds, and these are definitely a tale of 2 halves. This bed is doing brilliantly so far. This bed is not doing brilliantly. Now, in both cases, the corn is doing really nicely. If you compare it to the video a few weeks ago, you can see just how quickly the corn has grown. It's gone from being small plants of about that size to plants that are now, well, they're nearly 18 inches tall. Both sets have butternut squashes in, which are growing away nicely now, but I will admit, for about 10 days they were not happy. I think they were quite shocked at moving from the conservatory outside. The leaves yellowed a bit, but now the fresh leaves that are coming through are looking really nice and strong. But where the real difference happens, and where you can see the difference, is in the beans. On this side, we have a borlotti bean, or a borlotti bean, and they have pretty much all germinated, almost 100%, and they're developing really nicely. But I have a very sad tale to tell, and it concerns my yin yang beans. My yin yang beans are probably the seed that I rave about the most because I think they look incredible. Well, I would say if I have 2 living seedlings in there, that's the best that I've got. All of the seeds that I have either not germinated or have germinated and then been nibbled by something. I don't know whether it's mice, birds or pigeons, or a combination of all of them. But safe to say, they're pretty much all now non-existent. So I'm going to have to take a few days to work out an alternative plan, whether I try and sow some more in pots and put them in to get a head start, or whether I just accept that maybe it is something that hasn't entirely worked this year. I'm not too sure. But that covers these last 4 beds, and now we've covered all of the beds in the whole garden. So there you have it, the very first vegetable garden tour, and I really hope that you enjoyed it. For me personally, I'm delighted with the space. I am aware that things are a lot further back than maybe other gardeners have it, but equally, this vegetable garden simply didn't exist a few months ago, and it has taken time to create the actual structure and turn it into something that's going to work for years to come. But saying that, I already have had a few little wins. I've got a few nice little crops like the radishes that are ready to go. I've got loads of seedlings that are going to be ready in no time, and I've got some bigger plants that are giving me some real promise for the future. Things like the potatoes and the brassicas, once they develop, they're going to be giving me some great things to eat and enjoy. Plus, aside from anything, I don't know about you, but I think it actually looks like quite a nice, beautiful space now. It's a lovely place to come down in an evening and just chill out, or if I'm just standing watering it and tending it, it's just a really nice place to be. So I would love to hear from you. Leave me a comment in the comment section down below and tell me what you think. Give me some advice, give me your points of view. I always love hearing from you. Now, that's the veg garden. Next week, I'm going to be showing you a little bit more because I've got the polytunnel, but that is worthy of a whole separate episode because there is so much going on. So I'm going to leave that until next week. And until next week, see you later.